Stuart Sandeman is the breath coach. He hosts his own breath pod and is author of Breathe In, Breathe Out. He took a breath class with his mum for Mother's Day and it changed his life. He now works with artists, athletes and business leaders to boost mental and physical well-being.
If somebody told me just to breathe, I probably would have stuck my fingers up and said, speak some sense.
Stuart, are people less sick if they breathe better?
Was that okay? Am I losing my mind?
It's like a form of therapy then, isn't it?
Exactly that. It's therapy without words. We can really fine-tune ourselves before the day starts. And hopefully we're doing it right, but the majority of people are not doing it right.
Stuart, I want to start by asking you, what happened to you in that breath class that you took with your mum that changed your life?
We dived straight in with this question.
Yeah, straight in.
Yeah, it took me by surprise. I never thought about breathing more than just sort of chilling out. And I was shown a way of breathing that was quite dynamic and quite bizarre. It was mouth breathing for a start, which is not when we talk about nose and mouth. And with intermittent movement and sound, making sound yourself. And what happened to me in that session was, first of all, I felt a lot of physical changes in my body, a lot of energy moving, a lot of tingling, a lot of buzzing that felt quite bizarre, but quite nice. And then I could just start to feel emotion build and build and build and build. And it was emotion. When I went to that class, I recently lost my girlfriend to cancer. So I was going through a grieving process, and in that session, it was building and building and building. I had this huge emotional outburst over the session. We were breathing for about an hour, and I was also felt like I was not really there, like I'd left my body, but I felt that my girlfriend who passed away was there with me. So it was a very powerful, cathartic experience that left me with more questions than answers. And I think when we have an experience like that, what just happened? What was that? Was that normal? Was that okay? Am I losing my mind? Had someone spiked my drink before going in? There was all these questions I had when I finished that session. I felt really good, but I felt like any emotional release. I felt just very strange and wasn't quite sure. So I went into more. Thought, well, let's figure this out. Is this a one-off? And the more I practiced, the more I uncovered, and the more I wanted to learn more about breathing and breath and how we can use our breath to transcend our everyday living for deep healing and performance.
And as you practice more, what did you find happened to you from a health perspective? I mean, were there actual physical and mental changes that you could see a pattern evolving?
A huge pattern evolving. I mean, as I said, I was going through grief at the time. Before doing the sessions, I was in a pretty heavy, dark place in my mind. I didn't want to speak to anybody. That was the first thing. I had already said, what's anyone else going to do? Why would I want to speak to somebody? So for me, talking therapy or anything like that was out of the picture. And I think the more I uncovered, the whole part of me that I was releasing was the belief around strength. Big boys don't cry, and being vulnerable as a guy. So what happened afterwards, and the more I practiced, there's tangible physical differences. I was doing a lot of CrossFit at the time. I'm not one of the biggest or burliest of guys, and I was flying up the leaderboard. So I noticed that quite quickly, that I'm really flying up the leaderboard here. And what is the difference? I'm doing a daily breathwork practice. I wasn't feeling as tired in between rounds of high intensity training. And so that was the physical difference. It was very tangible and mappable on my scoreboard at CrossFit. The other differences for me was just the voice in my head started to be a bit more upbeat, a bit kinder. I know that's a bit abstract.
Why do you think that started to happen? Is it because you were in a different mindset, because you felt that change was happening and in a positive way?
Yes, I mean, that would be part of it. Our brains are wired negatively, and if we have experiences in our life that from childhood or even griefs and things that happen through our life, our brain and thought patterns will be a certain way, and we repeat our thoughts. 95% of thoughts are repeated. So we're repeating our same thoughts over and over again. And for me, I started to feel better and I started to think differently. But what the breath practice was allowing me to do was unravel, peel off the onion layers of the me that I was identifying as. Who was I at that point in time was a construct of what had happened before. Not just going through grief, but everything before that, everything that I had created in my reality as me, Stuart. I was unpicking that and unpicking maybe the heavier aspects of it, releasing it through the breath practice. So letting go of some of the doubt, the shame, the guilt, the anger, the frustration, feeling okay with some of these other skills that I thought were massive no-nos, like being vulnerable, being able to talk and speak. And as a result, the voice in my head was just much, much kinder to me.
It's like a form of therapy then, isn't it?
It is exactly that. Exactly that. It's therapy without words. And the nice thing about the whole process was it opened me up enough to then want to talk, because therapy is so important and so helpful and an amazing tool. But it has its limitations. It has its limitations because words to describe feelings or how our inner world through words is a little bit limiting. So to create an example of that, if I jumped in a swimming pool and you'd never been in, you say, how does it feel? For me to say the feelings of jumping in the swimming pool to you, you never really experience it or understand it through words. If I said, yeah, it was wet on my skin, it felt cold, it felt this. So words are an amazing way to explain and communicate. But when it comes to some of these deeper aspects, I feel like we get stuck in a box with words. And how do we explain that feeling that's just like a big ball of wool? So the nice thing about breath is our breath, every feeling that we have, every emotion that we have has a pattern of breathing. So once we uncover and start using our breath, the more we practice breathing and breath work, we can start to release some of these heavier emotions and get better at feeling and better at understanding our feelings and better at releasing our past emotional charge that isn't optimal for our day-to-day living. And yes, a good therapist will take you there. But what I found in my experience and the hundreds of people that I've worked with and thousands of people I've worked with is our breath can take you there quite quickly, because all of our experiences are mapped in our breathing.
Do you think you'd have ever been so sort of open to what it can do for you if it hadn't have been that you came to it at a time where you were desperately looking for a way through? Like you say, you were in a very, very dark place because you were grieving for your beautiful girlfriend. So is there something in that you sort of, it came to you at exactly the right time when you needed it most, and you found real solace in that?
Yeah, the funny thing was I wasn't looking for anything. I didn't want help. I was in a rut and I didn't want to speak to anybody, and I'd be fine, leave me alone. I'd slam some doors and punch some walls or curl up in my bed and not get out. Now, all that happened was my mum was really into yoga and something popped up for Mother's Day saying breathing workshop. And that is as far I thought, my mum will love that. I didn't think about it. I didn't look into it. I thought it would be a bit more mindful, chilling, sitting there breathing. But yeah, it unlocked this huge, changed my life, because now I share this with other people and help people reach their potential through breathing. But yes, I didn't really go out looking for it, but you're exactly right. If somebody had told me just to breathe, I probably would have stuck my fingers up and said, speak some sense. And when I cast my mind back to my own life, there are so many touch points that I thought, why was it? I left school to do sport, judo. I had high hopes of being Olympic champion, and I'd done judo all my life, and really wanted to excel in that sport. But nobody ever taught me how to breathe. I was on a judo mat at 4 years old, right through to 18, black belt by 16. No one ever said, this is how you breathe while you're exhausted during training sessions. After injury, I ended up going to uni and working in finance. And I was stressed out. And like anybody is in a busy finance job, and nobody ever taught me to breathe. And when I left that and started touring as a DJ, a bit of a jump there, but yeah, I moved into a very creative space. No one ever taught me to breathe. So I start to look back and think, well, no one actually teaches anyone to breathe. And most people are just breathing because of their environment or what they've learned around them. And hopefully we're doing it right, but the majority of people are not doing it right. And if breathing is what keeps us alive, but it also is linked to how we think, how we feel, our energy levels, our recovery states, our sleep, all these different touch points where people look at for better health and well-being. The first thing we need to look at is our breath. And once we get the breathing right, then everything else can fall into place.
Do you think learning how to breathe properly, I'm going to call it properly, has allowed you, or has allowed the grieving process to be not easier to digest, but has it helped you through that process? Because there'll be people out there who will find themselves in exactly like you were in that situation, and are perhaps looking for something, are looking to answers for how to deal with those sorts of things, and perhaps don't want to speak to people. Do you think it's been a real game changer for you in terms of how you've been able to grieve and letting go to some degree?
100%. Hugely. I don't think I would have got there by speaking personally, and maybe over time. What happens when we go through an experience, let's say grief, and grief can be all sorts of things. You can grieve moving house, or you can grieve moving country, or you can grieve losing somebody as well. So there's lots of different challenges that we have. And when we have an experience like grief or a negative emotion, our breathing contracts. And it contracts, and we squeeze it in tight as a safety mechanism. So our breathing is contracted and we're holding on. So what we do is start opening up the physical constriction in the breathing pattern. And what that physical constriction, yes, it can be physical things, but the majority of times, the reason it's contracted is because of emotional experience, because our brain and body is trying to keep us safe. So it's a fear response and a safety response. So our breathing changes depending on what's happening in our life. We also hold our breath and have these holding patterns to stop ourselves from feeling emotion. Now, what triggers the stop of feeling emotion is how we're programmed, which, coming back to myself as an example, big boys don't cry. 4 years old on a judo mat, teddy bear called Tough Ted, grew up in Scotland. You get the idea, you start to create this person that you believe you are. So then when you have an experience, you don't allow your breath to flow in the natural way, which would be tears. You're breathing with jugger and you'd have that emotional integration. Instead, I'd contract it because my brain says, no, this is what we do in this experience. We hold on. We hold on because we don't show emotion. So in essence, what you're trying to do is sweep the emotion under the carpet. I just hope, or put it in the cupboard and hope it's not going to open. But over time, that cupboard's going to get more and more filled with these different contractions and emotional experiences that will start to impact our physical and mental health.
And I'm presuming you now work with all types of people, whether it be athletes or CEOs, people running, big businesses. I mean, how much of a game changer can good breathing practices be for people who are in performance lifestyles, performance careers?
Yeah, it's a great question, because what I've been talking about so far is one way of using the breath, using our breathing for release. And if in anything, it's a deeper context. But we have two sides of breathwork. Breathwork is using our breath in many different ways, taking control of our breath to get a certain result. So you can take control of your breath or do a deeper practice to release the held tension in your body and your breathing cycle, to release whatever's gone before. Maybe that's the grief, maybe that's the belief patterns you need to rewire. But then also we can use our breath because we can consciously control our breath throughout the day. We can use our breath as a tool, a functional tool, to change the way we feel. And if we change the way we feel, we change the way we think. So there's one hand using our breath as a tool for release to optimize our inner workings, but then also throughout the day, having a toolkit of breath techniques so that we can take charge, we can hack into our own system and change the way we're feeling and operating and performing in any moment. So that might be using your breath to create a lot more energy because you're feeling a bit exhausted instead of reaching for a cup of coffee. That might be using your breath to calm yourself down because you're feeling a bit anxious or overwhelmed, or maybe you're nervous before a big pitch or meeting. Or that might be a practice that gets you into an optimal state of flow throughout your day, so that you are able to just breeze through your day and at a optimal level. So there's different ways of using our breath. You mentioned athletes, and then that's a whole separate arm of breath work and breathing. So we've got this kind of emotional release. We have functional breathing to take control of our mind throughout our day and optimize our state. And then we do have this specific way of using our breath, which I do with a lot of athletes, around how do we go that extra mile around? How can we increase our aerobic capacity, which is to do with breathing? How can we increase our VO2 max, which again is to do with delivery of oxygen to our cells? So it's quite specific around working with the body and the breathing flows and rhythms to maximize our output from each breath, so that we can, in essence, be more economic with every single breath, so we can get more power from each breath and get less tired during exercise. So there's 3 separate areas, if you like, or applications. And then within those, there's lots of applications. So when we think of just breathing, it's not as simple as, oh, I've done some breath work. It's, well, what is that style of breath work? Because there's some breath work that might not be the right breath work to do at a point in time.
Well, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense. I mean, of course, it feels like it should be attributed to what the need is at that particular time, rather than just breath work for breath work's sake. Can we try something? I know you're part of this sort of 5 a.m. club, which I am too, so we have that in common. Although the reason I'm part of that 5 a.m. club is because of 2 young children. It's nothing necessarily to do with getting everything done before 7. But if we think about that as part of a sort of a morning routine piece and prioritizing that, if I was to say, right, okay, I'm part of the 5 a.m. club and I want to get a load of stuff done before 7 because then I start the day optimum place that I want to be, and the rest of the day I'll have to just take care of itself. What do we do for our breath work at sort of between those hours of sort of 5 to 7 in the morning, when we obviously want to boost our energy and start the day taking it all on guns blazing? What's the best method to employ there in terms of breath work? And can we do it? Can I try it now?